In the quiet paranoia of the Cold War, the world was divided not just by ideology, but by fear. The West was terrified of what the communists might have perfected, the power to break the human mind, to turn loyal citizens into sleeper agents, to erase personality and rewrite loyalty. This fear bordering on hysteria led the world's most powerful intelligence agency, the CIA, down a path so morally bankrupt, so profoundly unethical, that its mere existence still echoes as one of the darkest chapters in US government history. This story is not a conspiracy theory. It is a documented, historical fact. Welcome back to Omen Myths. Today, we are opening the files on Project MK Ultra, the secretive and sprawling program dedicated to achieving the ultimate terrifying goal, mind control. This is the real history of the experiments, the drugs, the victims, and the desperate paranoia that fueled a 20-year descent into scientific madness. Part 1. The genesis of fear, Cold War paranoia, the seeds of MKUltra were sown in the deep anxiety of the early 1950s. The CIA, officially established a few years prior, was obsessed with two external threats. First, the Soviets were believed to be perfecting advanced interrogation and brainwashing techniques, a fear solidified by the testimony of Cardinal Joseph Mindszenty, who seemed broken and robotic after his imprisonment by the Hungarian communist regime. Second, the agency was terrified by the prospect of Manchurian candidates, fictionalized but highly plausible. Agents created through Chinese communist mind control techniques. The thought that an enemy could program a person like a machine was an existential threat. The CIA's answer was to fight fire with fire. The program that would become MKUltra was initially sanctioned in 1953 by Allen Dulles, then Director of Central Intelligence. The goal was twofold: to find techniques to utterly destroy the human mind for purposes of interrogation and capture, and conversely, to find methods to program a new identity or belief system into the vacant psychological space. The project was granted a massive budget and, crucially, absolute deniability. All protocols were classified, and funding was often channeled through dummy corporations and institutions to ensure maximum secrecy. The initial budget was immense, but the true cost was hidden by the decentralized, chaotic nature of the project. Money was funneled to universities, hospitals, research institutions, and even correctional facilities across the United States and Canada. These institutions, often unaware they were working directly for the CIA, provided a steady, disposable pool of subjects. The lack of central oversight was not a flaw. It was a feature designed to ensure that if any individual project was exposed, the entire structure could not be brought down. This structure became the perfect ethical vacuum. Part 2. The chemical assault LSD and the psychoactive arsenal. If MKUltra had a defining tool, it was LSD. The CIA became obsessed with lysergic acid diethylamide almost immediately after its discovery, viewing it as a potential truth serum, a drug that could break down a subject's psychological defenses and make them vulnerable to suggestion. Starting in the early 1950s, the agency began dosing subjects across the country, and these were not controlled academic experiments. These were often sudden, massive doses given without the subject's knowledge or consent, sometimes in social settings like bars and parties. One notorious program, known internally as Project Midnight Climax, involved setting up safe houses in San Francisco where CIA agents would observe unsuspecting individuals through one-way mirrors as they were given LSD, studying the effects of extreme disorientation and psychological breakdown on human behavior. The scale of the LSD experiments was staggering. The CIA purchased virtually the entire world's supply of the drug from its manufacturer, Sandoz, and distributed it to numerous sub-projects. The purpose was to study the drug's effects on memory, susceptibility to hypnosis, and the ability to induce states of extreme anxiety, fear, and panic. But the drug testing went far beyond LSD. MKUltra explored a terrifying pharmacological arsenal, including mescaline, psilocybin, barbiturates, amphetamines, and potent narcotics. The agency was looking for the perfect cocktail to induce temporary psychosis, manipulate emotions, or completely wipe clean a person's short-term memory. The ethical guidelines of the Nuremberg Code, which demanded voluntary consent for human experimentation, were not merely ignored. They were actively violated, driven by the belief that national security provided a permanent moral waiver. Part 3. The psychological destruction, the shock experiments, the project's horror wasn't limited to chemistry. Its most damaging work involved severe psychological and neurological abuse. Many of these experiments were conducted at the Allen Memorial Institute at McGill University in Montreal under the direction of Dr. Ewan Cameron. Cameron's experiments were aimed at total psychic driving, the attempt to erase a patient's existing personality and reprogram them with a new one. His subjects were often ordinary people seeking treatment for minor ailments like anxiety or depression. Cameron would subject them to extreme sensory deprivation, often keeping them in a drug-induced sleep for weeks or even months at a time, sometimes with a constant loop of a single, repetitive audio message playing into their headphones. When not in deep sleep, patients were often subjected to extremely high doses of electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, up to 40 times the normal therapeutic level, sometimes administered multiple times a day. The combined assault of radical sensory deprivation, massive drug doses, and extreme ECT was designed to induce a state of unpatterning or complete mental regression. The goal was to turn the mind into a blank slate, theoretically ready for programming. The results were catastrophic. Instead of creating super spies, Cameron's subjects were often left with permanent, irreversible psychological damage. They forgot how to talk, lost their childhood memories, and were left with debilitating amnesia and severe emotional trauma. The unpatterning was a destruction of the self, not a pathway to control. The victims were discarded, their lives irreparably broken by a government program that treated human beings as disposable laboratory tools. Part 4. Exposure and the Missing Files, the Legacy of Cover-Up. The project ran for 2 full decades until the political climate began to change in the early 1970s. The increasing public scrutiny following Watergate and the Vietnam War forced a reckoning within the intelligence community. In 1973, fearing exposure and scandal, the then director of Central Intelligence, Richard Helms, ordered that all files related to MKUltra be destroyed. This destruction was largely successful, making a complete accounting of the project nearly impossible. However, a small cache of financial records survived the purge, about 20,000 documents, which were later uncovered during a random file audit. These surviving documents formed the basis of the first public disclosure of MKUltra, leading to the Church Committee in the U.S. Senate and the Rockefeller Commission in 1975. The testimonies from these commissions, though incomplete, revealed the chilling scope of the project: the testing on unsuspecting citizens, the use of toxic substances, and the devastating consequences of the ethical violations. The government was eventually forced to pay reparations to some of the victims, a grim acknowledgement of the crimes committed in the name of national security. The legacy of MKUltra remains profound. It shattered the public trust in both the government and the scientific community, giving permanent life to the darkest conspiracy theories. The central question remains, were all the files truly destroyed? Given the project's decentralized nature and the decades it operated, it is a haunting historical certainty that many of its darkest secrets remain buried, unknown, and officially denied. Project MKUltra is more than just a historical footnote. It is proof that the darkest fiction about government control and scientific experimentation was, for a time, a horrifying, funded reality. It is a cautionary tale about the immense dangers of secrecy and the profound moral cost of fighting fear with ethical failure. Do you believe all the MKUltra files were truly destroyed? Or do the darkest secrets of the project still haunt the archives? Let me know your theory in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell for your weekly dose of unbelievable true stories and historical deep dives. We are here to explore the past's darkest secrets. Thanks for watching Omen Myths.